Hello guys, Oscar Hotel 8, Sierra Tango November here from Survival Tech Nord. Today we're talking about messaging in JS8Call. Now although it might not be completely apparent, JS8Call has a variety of messaging functionalities to ensure your message gets through to the receiving station. This functionality is also completely independent from the normal keyboard-to-keyboard QSO you're used to. In fact, I think it would be safe to say these messaging functionalities will be extremely useful in emergency communications, communications for preparedness, and group communications where reliability is critical. So, stick with me, and I'll tell you all about it.
You are listening to the Emergency Broadcast Systems. This station broadcasts emergency news and official information on the air for assigned area.
Now, in addition to JS8Call messaging, this video also covers, in brief, NVIS on 80 meters for reliable communications. And just for the sake of discussion, all three stations were located in KP25. Station configuration was the Chameleon MCOM 3B, 3 meters off the ground in horizontal configuration. I was also using JS8Call version 1.01 and the Yaesu FT891 at 25 watts. Now before we get started with the messaging examples, I'll show you a test we did at 5 watts, 10 watts, and 25 watts using an NVIS antenna and JS8Call on 80 meters. When we're looking at JS8Call or any digital mode actually as a tool for grid down or off-grid communications in an emergency communications scenario, we need to find the absolute balance between using the least amount of power necessary versus effective and reliable communications. So in this example, you can see that JS8Call is slow, but it's very effective. Using a very modest antenna configuration, we were able to maintain reliable and effective communications for nearly a day and a half without any intermediate infrastructure. Low power, the right antenna, and the right digital mode. This may not be the recipe for traditional emergency communications, but it definitely is an effective and reliable unorthodox emergency communications method. Because of these low power requirements, we can use rigs like the 817, the KX2, the KX3, the MCHF, or many of these Chinese micro HF radios to get more people on HF and the JS8Call network for emergency communications. So now let's move on to a few of the different types of messaging examples we have in JS8Call. In this first example, I'm just going to tell the guys what I'm going to do, then follow that up with a few different messaging examples. As we're talking about reliable communications with JS8Call, one of the tools we have in JS8Call is the message acknowledgement. The acknowledgement is like a reception report, simply letting us know that the receiving station has received that message. In the rest of the video, please look out for the message acknowledgements after my transmissions. In this first example, we'll send a direct message from my station to Oscar Hotel 8, Echo Foxtrot, India. So now we sent that message off, and all we have to do is wait for an acknowledgement. And there we have it. Let's go ahead and move on to the next message example. So now we're going to send a relayed message. We're going to send that message to Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Fox India, requesting his station to forward that message back to me. Now, in order to do this, we're going to type Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Fox India into the message box, then follow that with the forward symbol. Next, we'll add the call sign to the station we want to forward our message to, then add the MSG or message designation after the call sign. After that, we enter our message and fire it off. The message formatting will be edited automatically for you, and the checksum will be added to the end of the message. Things are a little bit different with the relayed message as with a direct message. When Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Foxtrot India receives that message for forwarding, he's going to directly forward it back to my station, but he's not going to send an acknowledgement just yet. His station is going to forward that message until my station receives all of it and sends him back an acknowledgement of reception. When he receives that message acknowledgement from my station, he'll forward that message acknowledgement back to the originating station as an acknowledgement. In this example, Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Foxtrot India is the intermediary station. The cool thing about this is any station that can hear both the originating station and the receiving station can be intermediaries. I think far too often we get stuck in this cookie-cutter emergency communications mindset. But obviously, this concept of mesh networking on HF with low overhead, low power, and so on is critical to emergency communications for preparedness. So, once the message is delivered to the receiving station, JS8Call will automatically send an acknowledgement to the intermediary station. The intermediary station will then send an acknowledgement back to the originating station. I'm hoping by this point in the video you're starting to understand the networking capabilities of JS8Call. As long as a station hears at least one station on the network, it can add or contribute resources to the network and of course use resources from the network for messaging. Also, having the ability to store a message on my own station for another station or on another station where the operator might not be available to chat right at this moment, this is extremely powerful. In fact, I might even dare to say this mesh networking or JS8Call is just what the emergency communications for preparedness community was looking for a group communications solution on HF. By the way, I actually didn't notice the signal fading from Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Foxtrot India during his last transmission. And nevertheless, it's extremely nice to see a complete message intact arrive in my inbox from Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Fox India, despite the fading. Okay, let's move on. So, JS8Call can also store messages for another station. You can store those messages on your own station. You can store a message on the receiving station's own station. You can also store a message on an intermediary station for a second station. Let's take a moment to see how that all works. Earlier in the day, I stored a message on my station for Oscar Hotel 8 Charlie Whiskey. He's a neighbor being only a few kilometers north of my home location. Now, I didn't know he was going to jump in here, but you can see my station reply to him, letting him know that there's a message stored on my station for him. We're going to watch him try to retrieve that message, but it's going to fail because I'm having a QSO with Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Foxtrot India. This sometimes happens in the real world, but Oscar Hotel 8 Charlie Whiskey can come back later on to retrieve that message once my station is idle again. For now, we're going to store a message on Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Foxtrot India's station for later retrieval by Oscar Hotel 8 Charlie Whiskey. Now, once again, there's a benefit for emergency communications for preparedness. Weaker stations with limited range and HF capabilities can use stronger, more capable fixed stations to get their messages out there and to their recipients. The three enablers for making this happen is firstly JS8Call being an efficient and effective digital mode, making low power communications possible. Then we have this very modest NVIS configuration for our antenna. Finally, we have a third station or intermediary station contributing its resources to the JS8Call network. Certainly, we have other digital modes like Contestia or Olivia, which are also efficient, but they don't provide the networking capabilities of JS8Call. In fact, they don't have any mesh networking capabilities at all. Hopefully, Oscar Hotel 8 Charlie Whiskey is not getting too frustrated right now, but he'll certainly see that I'm sending a message through an intermediary station for him. I'm not sure if he knew I was working on videos today, but anyway, he's a good sport. So let's watch as I fire off that message to Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Foxtrot India, which is meant and will be stored for Oscar Hotel 8 Charlie Whiskey. As we watch Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Foxtrot India relay this message for me back to Oscar Hotel 8 Charlie Whiskey, it might be a good time to talk about communications in amateur radio. Most of the communications taking place on amateur radio do so in a couple of different ways. Firstly, we have the sked or schedule, then we have the net, and finally, and probably the most common, is the random contact. That's when we're making a random CQ, not knowing who, if anyone, will answer. When our focus is emergency communications or emergency communications for preparedness, we won't always have the luxury of establishing communications during a sked, during a net, or leaving it to the random contact. In fact, the idea of leaving emergency communications for preparedness to chance is pretty ridiculous. With JS8Call, we can take advantage of its built-in messaging, we can take advantage of the mesh networking, and we can take advantage of its inbuilt positioning capabilities. From this perspective, we can start to understand the potential of JS8Call for emergency communications for preparedness. And if nothing else, having this discussion allows us to think outside the cookie-cutter emergency communications box we are all normally focused on when we talk about IMCOM. Alright, now we can see that Oscar Hotel 8 Charlie Whiskey has queried Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Foxtrot India station, asking if it has messages for him. Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Foxtrot India station has responded with a yes, so Charlie Whiskey is going to ask for that message to be sent to him. In this scenario, Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Foxtrot India is the intermediary station, Oscar Hotel 8 Charlie Whiskey is the receiving station, and Oscar Hotel 8 Sierra Tango November is the originating station of the message. Now we can see Oscar Hotel 8 Charlie Whiskey is about to receive the entire message. When his station has received the entire message intact, he'll send an acknowledgement back to Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Foxtrot India. You may have noticed at the beginning of this session, Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Foxtrot India sent an acknowledgement to me that he has received that message I sent and has stored it on his station. Now we see Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Foxtrot India has received an acknowledgement from Oscar Hotel 8 Charlie Whiskey saying, yes, I've got the message. This time we're going to do something a little different. We're going to relay our message through two intermediate stations before it reaches its final destination. I'm going to send a message to myself through Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Foxtrot India, who will send it to Oscar Hotel 8 Charlie Whiskey, who will ultimately send it back to me. Now remember guys, we're only doing this for the sake of presentation. We would never really purposely load the network unnecessarily. Alright, let's take a look at how this is going to work. Okay, obviously I meant I'm going to send the first message to Oscar Hotel 8 Charlie Whiskey. He's going to send the message to Oscar Hotel 8 Echo Foxtrot India, who's going to send that message then on to me. Remember, I'm only using short messages for the sake of keeping this video as short as possible. If you've got a solid signal between yourself and the receiving station, there's really no limit to the size of the message. Just keep it reasonable, and remember we're using someone else's station to send these messages. Since I've been making videos about JS8Call and emergency communications, there's been some feedback about bandwidth. Some operators mistakenly complain about the slow data rates of JS8Call. Now, I'm not going to try to get into some debate about what's better, what we should have, or what we shouldn't have. I believe there are situations where we want to have extremely reliable communications regardless of their throughput. If I want to send a Facebook update with a 3 megabyte image attached to it, I can use WinLink for that. But if we're trying to deploy a platform for critical messages beyond the range of traditional VHF or UHF radios, then I have to consider 80 or 40 meters, an NVIS antenna, and a narrow bandwidth, very reliable messaging mode like JS8. If we want reliable, weak signal and low power communications on HF, we do so at the expense of throughput. The only way to achieve low power communications, weak signal communications, and reliability is using narrow bandwidth. Alright, let's fire off that acknowledgement to let everyone know that the message arrived successfully. And there we have it. I think the last thing we can do is show you how to retrieve a message which has arrived at your station. So there's a couple of different ways to do this. Firstly, you can right-click on the call sign in your heard list, select View Message Inbox, then click that. A list of messages you received from that station will be displayed in the inbox. Unfortunately, you can't double-click on one of those messages to pop it open into its own box. But hopefully that's something which will improve in later versions of JS8Call. The other way we can do this is to go to the View tab at the menu on the top of the app. Open that menu, then click View Inbox. This inbox view is a little different because it shows you all of the messages from all of the different stations you've received messages from. So again, it would be nice to be able to double click on one of these messages and have a pop-up to view the entire message at the same time. Other than that feedback, I think this works extremely well. This also means from a communications preparedness perspective, the radio operator is no longer required to be tied or tethered to the radio. Alright, there's something else I'd like to show you. Let's take a look at how we can store a message on our own station for a station we actually haven't heard yet. So here we can see I want to store a message from my buddy John, November 0, Juliet, Delta, Sierra. Now since he isn't in my call activity list, I need to add his station to the list. To do that, we're going to right-click on the empty spot in the call activity side of the screen, selecting Add New Station. We enter John's call sign there and click OK. Now John's call sign is listed in my call activity list as a sort of ghost station. Now all I have to do is right-click on John's call sign and click Store Message. Now I can enter my message for John and save it. When John comes on air, when my station hears him, it will give him an alert or an acknowledgement saying, hey, there's a message on my station for you. Like we saw earlier with Oscar Hotel 8 Charlie Whiskey, John can query my station to receive that message. That's all there is to it. Now it's also possible to do this by storing the message on an intermediate station. In this example, I'm monitoring my buddy Paul, Hotel Bravo 9, Alpha Victor Kilo. I noticed that his station has heard another buddy of mine in the USA, Kilo Mike 4, Alpha Charlie Kilo. Now, although Jason can't hear me directly, I can store a message on Hotel Bravo 9, Alpha Victor Kilo station. When that station in Switzerland hears Jason's station again, it'll let him know that there is a message waiting for him. To do this, we're going to right-click on the station we want to use to store the message. For this example, that's Hotel Bravo 9 Alpha Victor Kilo. We'll right-click and go to Directed Messages, and then select Store Message for call sign. When we do that, our message box will be populated with the routing and a prefab message. All we have to do is edit the call sign and enter the message. So we'll just enter a funny message for Jason, and I'm sure he'll appreciate that. Now we can fire off that message, and if everything went okay, Hotel Bravo 9 Alpha Victor Kilo will send us an acknowledgement saying, hey, I got the message and it's stored on my station. That's all there is to it. So what have we learned in this video? Personally, while making this video, I began to understand the reliable messaging built into JS8Call. In making this video, I began to understand how it can be used for local NVIS communications, regional communications, or even communications overseas. As a narrow bandwidth mode, we've also seen how JS8Call is extremely effective for weak signal work. Moreover, as a narrow bandwidth mode, it's also very effective for QRP power or low power stations. We've also learned that we need to sacrifice throughput for reliability. Even so, I think that's a reasonable sacrifice to make if we can run 10 or 20 watts instead of 100, 200, or 500 watts to achieve the same results. Having the ability to run low power with an efficient mode, definitely better suited to a grid-down emergency communication scenario. And finally, all of the incredible messaging capabilities of JS8Call are backed up with an incredibly robust mesh network without any infrastructure requirements. And there you have it. Let me know if you agree, disagree, or if you have some other perspective in the comments. I'm also incredibly curious to know if you all believe, as I do, that there is a huge disconnect between amateur radio emergency communications and communications for preparedness. Let me know in the comments. The JS8Call community is growing, guys. So do me a favor and help us spread the message. Let's build the JS8Call community. If you're supporting the channel through Patreon, PayPal, or simply sharing my content, you're absolutely magnificent, and I couldn't do it without you. For the rest of you, if you like what I'm doing, if you like the content I'm creating, consider leaving me a comment and a thumbs up to let me know. And if it's not too much to ask, share this video with someone or someplace where other operators might enjoy it. Rock and roll, guys. Thanks for watching. Ciao.